in order to build the consistency that you're wanting based on solving what you're specifically saying here, which was, where was it at? It was consistent lead gen and proper lead management and follow-up. You have to have consistent prospects, right? And so the way to get consistent prospects is choosing probates, which I know you focus on, probates and tax delinquencies. Tax delinquencies are easier to get a hold of than probates, because probates, you got to do heirs and stuff. What's going on, man? My hair is crazy today. I've been bringing my sweaters on and off like crazy. I got a haircut here in like 35 or 40 minutes or something like that, so it's gonna be all right. Welcome to the Real Estate Dojo podcast, is what we call it. It's a consult podcast where we bring on real estate investors and we simply ask them what they got going on in their business, and we give them advice on the one or two things that you can implement now in order to help remove those red lines from your P&L. Real Estate Dojo, acronym RED, hence the whole red from your P&L. I don't know why I keep explaining that in the beginning. I think it's just because I feel like I don't quite understand it myself yet, but maybe you guys do. So today we have Eric, who is down in the St. Pete market, Pinellas County and Tampa area. I think he's done a few deals in both those locations, as well as across other areas of Florida, I believe. But he can answer that. We're going to get an update on where he's at in his business now. We're going to talk about some tools that he's using, and then we're going to figure out how can we give him a couple, nuggets in order to move forward to get to his end goal. So let's bring him on real quick. What's up, Eric?
Hey, how we doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. All right. So you've, I'm sure, watched at least one or two of these. We don't have too many of these episodes out by the time that you're on here. I think maybe only like 6 or 7 of them. You may have seen them or may not have seen them. But you do at least know, because you answered the questions that we had for you, that we're going to break into your business a little bit, talk about what you're doing right now, what you've done, and give you a few bits of advice moving forward. So with that being said, just explain real quick, kind of, a little bit about you, what you're doing in the business as of right now.
So currently I've got 2 VAs, both of which are doing Sensei Flow. I have one of them who also does more like the data management, and so she's kind of in charge of tracking KPIs, downloading data, uploading data, making sure we have the right people to call, and then that's. I'll toss in some door knocking if there's people that I really need to get a hold of. But as far as like a super broad, overarching model of what we're currently doing, that's where we stand.
Perfect. Okay. And then as of right now, what's your total overhead roughly monthly?
Probably, let's see, under 2,000 a month. Probably like 1,500 to 1,500.
Okay, 1,500, 2,000 months, somewhere around there. Okay, and that's in that, and primarily, I would say most of that sounds like it's in VA's cost.
Yeah, the vast majority of that is.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, so good. Okay, so cool. Well, let's dive into it. So, let's update this. What is primarily you wholesaling, flipping, or what's your primary exit strategy?
Wholesale, and then if I can JV a buy and hold, I'll do that. But primarily wholesaling right now, because I'm still new to it, and so I'm still looking to build up the initial capital, to build up reserves, emergency funds, all that kind of stuff. I want to make sure the business is solid before I start taking on and holding too many properties. Okay,
perfect, awesome. All right, so 2 VAs plus me is what you put on the form here, which you just mentioned. And really, your big struggle is just consistent lead gen and proper lead management and follow up. So I want to break into the consistent lead gen aspect of things, and I want to break down and understand a little bit more. But before we do, the current marketing strategies that you are doing for lead gen is Sensei Flow, which is essentially you're doing sequential marketing. You cold call them, SMS them, and then direct mail them, one-off, door knocking if needed. So I'm guessing if you don't reach them via the phone and they're local, then you go ahead and you try and get a hold of them by door knocking. And currently you're using REISift, Propstream, Aircall, and Google Sheets. And I'm assuming Google Sheets is primarily just for all your KPI tracking.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So from a software perspective, you're like less than 500 a month, which is, well, right around there, probably about 500 a month in overhead, which is great. And I'm assuming for most of those, you're probably paying annually. So it's even less than that. It's probably more like a $5,000 a year cost. And so that's always fantastic. The only reason I know that is because you're an annual at REISift, I know, and I'm if you're not at Propstream, then that would make sense. And Aircall, I don't think you can do annually, but maybe you can. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think I did do annual for Aircall, and I think for the year it was $900, maybe $1,200.
Okay. Yeah. So really awesome thing. So what's really cool about it is one deal from you can cover your operations overhead, for the whole year, and then some. So that's really awesome. Really, people is where your expense comes in. So let's talk about this whole consistent lead gen thing. I want to understand, is it consistent lead gen or is it lead gen volume? Because, are you saying that you're not consistently talking to people? Or are you saying that you're not consistently getting enough leads for what you want?
Well, I mean, kind of both, but I mean, like with the consistent lead gen, I guess I was saying that because when I look back at my KPIs, like October, November, I think I generated 20 to 30 leads. And then, December, January, we were at, 6 for December. And then January, I think we were at, 10. Right. And so, I know things slowed down in these couple months, but, I'm not at a point where I can consistently say, hey, I know for a fact every day I'm going to generate X number of leads on average, and so I want to be able to get to the point where I know, if I make this many dials, if we hit this many prospects, have this many conversations, that's going to lead to this many leads.
Yeah. So a couple things on that. We've already talked about this, but in general, in terms of the numbers that you just mentioned, I want people to understand when they say, oh, only 5, only 10, only like 15 or whatever leads. Those leads that you're getting typically are probably like a 10-to-1 conversion. So that's right around a 1 deal a month, roughly, KPI, right? Something like that.
On average. Yeah. I think I get about one, probably every 10 to 15 leads is a deal.
Is a contract.
So yeah, roughly.
Yeah. So and that's just the only reason to say that is because of the fact that you're of the type of marketing you're doing with your lower overhead. That's what it is. So and that's focusing on really those niche individuals, right? You're hitting a really small amount of individuals, but you're hitting them with quality. And so really the issue is that it's a couple things, most likely. The first one being that you're spending obviously a good amount of time in the follow-up aspect of things on prospects, trying to get a hold of them. So that's making it so we're not reaching as many prospects, which is fine. But because of that, in the first 90 days to 4 months or so of doing this, there's this like full true baseline that ends up happening. In the very beginning, you end up having a lot of success in reaching people, a lot of leads, because it's our initial through cycle. But then we don't have as much new data coming in, so we're not getting as much new throughput. So it ends up kind of having this plateau that happens where initially we might be in bulk cold calling has the same effect, where if you're bulk dialing initially in your first dial through, you're getting like 2 or 4 leads, but you're dialing like 5,000 numbers a day or whatever, and then after you dial through that list, then you dial through it a second time, and it's like, well, I'm only getting like 1 or 2, and then a third time it continues to like dwindle down a bit. And so there's this plateau, which is why a lot of companies have that new data every single month that they're adding in. But no matter what, this is a delayed issue, kind of like, tax, delaying your taxes. Like at some point, you're going to have to pay the piper one way or another. And it's the same case with your lead gen, is you're going to have either a certain marketing strategy added in and ramped up to compensate, or you're going to have to, essentially something has to bounce out, because even in bulk dialing, you're going to run out of data. So you're going to have to go back, and in this, niche approach, you're going to have to ramp up or add in, something on the front side, or like online marketing, in order to kind of have some of that consistency, because there's no way to know, and there's a good average, right? No matter what, like there's a good average to say, okay, if I dial 1,000 dials, I'm going to talk to this many people. But the problem is a few things. The first one is that depending on the type of list, depends on the type of contact. Like you're calling probates versus vacants. It's or vacants versus, just straight equity lists, like
Yeah.
you're going to have a different contact ratio. So when we're hitting all of these different lists, it kind of creates an uncertainty. So the only way to get that kind of predictability that you're talking about is to focus on marketing to a specific list and only that specific list, to build the consistency around that type of individual. Because like vacant properties, the type of phone numbers you're getting, for example, are could be from 5 years ago when the property became vacant, right? So there's just that different contact ratio that can really fuck you up. So if you're moving the type of data that you're focusing on, and like in a last month you were focusing on one type of data, then you ran out of it and you start focusing on a new type of data, it's going to totally change your KPI there. So that's one thing to watch out for. But more than anything, it's a 90-day average that you should be looking at, and that's what the averages are made off of. The daily expectation is not ever going to be possible. Like even in really big operations, like they could try to say that they're going to say, okay, well today I know if we dial 5,000 phone numbers, we're going to get this many leads, and that's just like target. It's not actually ever possible, right? Because tomorrow you could get 10, and today I might get 3. And that's just the nature of the beast. So it's always based off the averages. So the question is after we get that average after a 90-day period in time, and tomorrow we don't get any leads, the ability that has to be in place is, well, did we do what we were supposed to do, to get leads? And if we did, great. Tomorrow, if we do it again and we still don't get any leads, okay. Next day, if we do it again, we still don't get any leads. Now it's like kind of getting a little weird because we can start seeing that pattern of our KPI kind of shrinking. And so we have to have the thing in place to figure out why that is. Because if we know that dialing X amount of, phone numbers is still going to result to X amount of pickups, that's a really easy one because that's just phone number based. And that's based off your skip tracing provider, X amount of dials, X amount of pickups. If we have that and we have that average and we can see that one staying consistent, but then all of a sudden our correct number ratio drops. Okay, now we know that it could be the type of data that we're calling or something else, right? So we got to figure out the consistency of what is consistent, or like what KPI is being consistent in our cold calling, and then which one starts changing. Is it our correct number to dial ratio where, okay, well, we're dialing 1,500 phone numbers this month or this day or whatever, and we got this many correct phone numbers, but we got X amount of not interesteds. Okay, well, are we getting a lot more not interested than we used to? If that's the case, then it could be a change in just market in general. It could be the caller. It could be a lot of things. So the number one thing, which I know that you have a really good KPI tracking, so like we need to look back historically and figure out which KPIs are consistently being consistent and which one is not, and where is that because let's say we have 5 KPIs, or let's say 6 KPIs in front of us. The first 3 could be consistent, and then it's the 4th one that all of a sudden seems to start changing, and then the 4th and 5th are consistent in the terms of like they rely on the 4th one. For example, a correct number to dial ratio. If your correct number to dial ratio goes down, your lead gen's going down, right? Because if you're not getting a hold of the right person, then obviously it's going to dip. If you are getting a hold of the right person, saying, yeah, you got the right number, I'm just not interested. Obviously, that's great. Not interested are just as good as leads. A lot of people don't look at it like that, but in the form of marketing, that's a correct number. They're just not interested right now. Not interested today's or interested tomorrow's. So then that's where we got to figure out. So if you want to try to figure out, how to improve this, what you really got to do is you have to choose one type of data set, and you have to choose at least 1,000 prospects on that data set, and then get through 1,000 prospects and then duplicate that one more time around. The downfall to this obviously is that, well, we want to produce revenue. And so over the next month or two that it takes to get that, baseline KPI, you're dealing with what you get. What I recommend people do in that middle ground, and why that's happening, is do an effort that is a bulk outbound approach that creates, inbound, which for me, I think the best thing for that is a direct mail. I think choosing whatever data sets you are trying to hit, and then doing a 42-cent type postcard to those 1,000 in that meantime to produce inbound is the best way to go about it. And so I would rather become super dominant in that niche and hit those people. That way I know that while I'm reaching them on the phone now, I've already sent that postcard, and I can have that sentence when they do pick up. I can say, hey, I sent you something in the mail. I was just checking to see if you got it. It was actually an offer for your property. And so we can change the narrative. We can use that outbound mail piece now as a sales, a bolster on our sales process, compared to, something like Facebook or something like that. It's not as good from that approach. So right now, what type of data are you focusing on? Like, what is the main list?
Well, I mean, mainly vacant. And then, yeah, so the answer is vacant. But I just finished putting together a county data database where I pretty much have every single single family, condo, townhouse, whatever, like every property type that I'd consider buying. I've got that, and then I cross-reference that against all the niches. So what my plan was is I just 2 days ago I had Mimi, my VA, pull the last 90 days of all the different niches and cross it against the database, and I came up with just over 1,200 prospects. So my thought was just tackle those 1,200 because that's 1,200 like evenly distributed across the different niches, and that really, just basically saying these are fresh, vexation prospects and tackling those. Although that's not one list, that's all the lists.
Right. So that would be a good example of what you would direct mail, right?
Okay.
That's kind of like a blanket overarching. What I would like to see you do, especially since you're in Florida, is focus on tax delinquency or foreclosure base. I would say tax delinquency would be best. Auction-based properties, and in order to build the consistency that you're wanting, based on solving what you're specifically saying here, which was where was it at? It was consistent lead gen and proper lead management and follow up. You have to have consistent prospects, right? And so the way to get consistent prospects is choosing probates, which I know you focus on, probates and tax delinquencies. Tax delinquencies are easier to get a hold of than probates because probates, you got to do heirs and stuff. So tax delinquency. So get the tax delinquent list in those 2 counties that you're in. Okay. Get them into your SIFT account, and don't worry about filtering by vacancy or any vexations or anything. If it's stacked, fantastic. It doesn't matter. Just filter by tax delinquency, start from the top and work your way down from the most motive, highest vexation down to the lowest. If they end up, becoming a lead, if they end up being not interested, all that stuff doesn't matter. In terms of like our overall KPI, what we care about, I phrased that wrong. I care about the fact that they're tax delinquent. If they're probate and they're anything else, that's cool, but that's not my core metric I'm looking at. I'm looking, okay, they're tax delinquency. I'm calling through as many as I can, and I'm basing my KPIs off of the fact that they're tax delinquent. Then once I start closing deals from that, right, or I start getting leads from that, I'm going to look at those leads. I'm going to go back and say, okay, well, that lead was tax delinquent, but they're actually also probate, or they're also actually code enforcement, or they're actually vacant. And now we can start building an avatar around that more niche effort, right, that you are doing. But don't really worry so much about don't go down here, stay like a level above that, right? So it technically like tier 2 data, right, instead of tier 1 data necessarily. And that way you can have the volume of prospects that you need to burn through them, and do that, as I say, like get through burning, like be aggressive in getting through those. Don't do your follow up and send a direct mail and do all that stuff still, but be aggressive in getting through those. That way we can get caught up on them, and now we can predictably say, I'm going to bring in new stuff on that monthly or whatever basis, so that I can say, okay, well, after I went through those first 1,000, I'm playing catch up. I got, X amount of leads from that. I know that when the new year comes around and I have all these new vacancies, or every single month, people become tax delinquent, right? It's just not shown or released out there, right? You don't get the list every single month, but every month somebody's becoming, behind. It just doesn't release again on public records until that 2-year mark. So So go back and look at, well, okay, well, it took me this many. Now on a monthly basis, I'm going to get 50 new more, and I'm going to reach through those 50, and I'm going to continue to build that consistency. Meanwhile, though, however, I'm going to do that. I'm going to become really good at that on this one type of data set. I'm going to take the 1,200 people that are of all these different problems, and I'm going to send them direct mail, cheaper mail. But once I get consistency on the tax delinquency, to get to the consistent thing that you're talking about, we have to add in another marketing strategy, which would be like maybe focus on just only probates, right? And then we focus on another one where we're focusing on just foreclosures. And now we have tax delinquency, foreclosures, and probates. So 3 things that will always happen, especially in Florida.
Yeah.
That we're consistently hitting this same data set every single month. And the new records I'm becoming first to market on. And so if you're doing that, right, if there's lack of lead volume, it's not because of the marketing strategy. It's not because of you not talking to people. Typically, it's not because you're not trying. It's because we don't have enough ways that we're getting in front of them.
So because I know you're saying, get the list initially, power through it, and then get new stuff. I'm wondering, like, what are your thoughts on going after Liz Pendens versus tax delinquent? Because the tax delinquent only comes out once a year, and so I wouldn't have new data to go after monthly. It'd just be annually.
Well, it is. That's what I'm saying. So the tax delinquency, meaning that you're officially tax delinquent according to the state of Florida, comes out on an annual basis, right? However, if somebody started and bought their house today and they paid their taxes or they didn't pay their taxes, right? Like they're still becoming delinquent on a given month.
Well, right, but I don't know who those would be until
you would
at the end of the
if
year.
you build a bot.
Okay.
Right. So you're going to check. You're going to check to see. Now they're going to pay. So it's still going to come out on an annual basis. Like if they're 2013, 14, or 15, right? And they're going to be, or whatever they're delinquent, right? But whether they pay their taxes or not pay their taxes is also still, it's on county record. You can go on there and you can see it. Now, once it comes tax auction, that's another story. On a monthly basis, things are going to tax auction, right? So what your objective is to get ahead of the things that, I guess that's what I was talking about, tax delinquency versus tax auction, right? You're going to hit all the tax delinquency, and then on a monthly basis, you're going to work towards getting a hold of those tax auctions. Your job is to try to make sure you do that before it's too late for the auction basis, right? But you don't want to spend too much time doing that. However, the whole tax auction list you could go through for a whole year, and you could build a multi-million-dollar business off of just the tax auction list, or just the tax delinquency list, rather, right? Because even if you're going to get through it initially, right? But after you get through it initially, you burn through on the phone number side. Now that's where the direct mail comes in on a monthly basis continually, and you're going to produce inbound from that. And so go ahead.
So with burning through the initial, let's say 2,000 records, is that something you'd recommend putting on like a power dialer, or should I be still Sensei flowing that?
No, you should still Sensei flow because you want to know what's good or bad. The big thing though is making sure you skip trace in the first location. And then who did you not skip trace in the first location, skip trace in the second location, all those. Make sure you do that cycle properly, right? And then put on the direct mail aspect of things, and then let that continue to ride. And then some of the data sets that you're going to get are going to be on a quarterly basis. Some of it's going to be on a weekly basis. None of that necessarily matters because the deals are still sitting in there no matter how you look at it. Whether it's this month or in 2 months from now, the properties are going to be sold are still in that data set. Right? The stuff that's tax delinquent right now that you call through that you don't get a hold of in 4 months from now, when that property, someone does get a hold of it, like it's still the same property, so it's more so just again, that type of way that we're getting in front of them. Once we get the ability to get through that list one time, we're going to send them direct mail now we're going to start doing the other things that are needed, like, reinvesting into hitting that same list on Facebook for like getting in front of them in different angles. And so once that's done, now we add in, probate, which on probate we can get on a weekly or monthly basis, and then we can hit those. And that might be, more that consistent lead gen that we're getting. But my point being, really the underlying thing for you, Eric, is that you need to base your KPIs based off of the different lists, right? On what is your lead intake for outreach on those types of vexations. Or else if you're trying to lump them all together, what you could do, like you say, okay, all my stacked on average, all my stack is X amount of, leads per month. Right. But because it is the type of data it is, and these people are hard to get a hold of, some days you can have 0 leads and some days you can have 6. It's just so sporadic because it depends on a lot of variables. Unlike straight high equity data, if you're blasting 10,000 records a day on that, the people are typically easier to get a hold of. It's just they're a lot less motivated when you do get a hold of them because of the fact that, it takes 70 of those leads to get one deal. Right. And so once you get it on lock, though, with these first 3, or even one list, it's okay to add in that straight high equity, type list, and just blast just to, not miss opportunity of that convenient sell. It's just, that's going to increase your overhead when in all reality, that same money you would be doing over there, you could just spend in direct mail and have more, solid, strategy. So, okay. So anyway, what I would love to see, from you is I'd love to see you to go back to your KPIs, look at over the last 3 months, which one is which first 3 KPIs are the consistencies, average dials, total number of prospects. And then like, at what point do you start seeing a shift? Where did your KPI start transitioning? Was it in dial to connection? Was it in correct number to dials? When did you start seeing that, creep happen? And then let's look at that and see, okay, is there something that you can control there? Or after it creeped, did it stay consistent again?
Right.
And if it did, that means that that's truly our real KPI, because of the fact that we gave it enough time to have that plateau happen. And now we can base off that. And it might be that you only get 1 lead every 3 days by calling 150, humans. That might be it.
Right.
If that is what it is, then that's what we have to base off. It might be 5 leads a month from that. That just means that on probates, with 1 VA, you only get 10 leads every 2 weeks or 15 leads in a quarter, but 15 leads is a deal in probate in a quarter. And that deal size is X amount of dollars. So if that deal size is, let's say, 45,000, then that means that you can pay someone 15,000 a year to make 160,000 a year. Right. Because you're going to be able to do that each quarter or whatever. So we just got to understand what that is. And that's just the nature of building that niche aspect of things. Then all you do is you hire 3 days, right? And that's how you can scale that. Okay, I have it built in. I need to do the same exact thing for the second. And, I'm going to increase it now and increase it. Because the truth is that very few companies, like for probate, for example, or any other niche, like solely focus on that one niche and only make, revenue off that one niche in one county only. Right. Like it's like very few people focus on just tax lien season, just Pinellas County, and get 5 deals a month from it without having massive overhead and without buying from the auction and spending too much on properties and having very low margin. Right. Yeah. Most companies, what they do is, like, if they're going to focus on tax liens, for example, they go statewide. They become really good at it in one and they start working out statewide, and they have a team, focusing on that. Like, for example, one of the guys that buys a fuck ton of tax lien properties up in my market is down in, Tampa. He was up here. He lives down in Tampa, and he buys a crap ton of tax lien properties across all of Florida. And he started up here though in Pensacola. And so, obviously there's evolutions to it, but it starts with understanding where's that KPI plateau at? What is my real normal? So I can predict that normal, so I can spend money based off of it. And in between that latency, in between when I know, okay, well, through the calling efforts, I'm only going to generate, maybe 1 lead every 3 days or whatever, right? Or every 5 days or every week, because these people aren't answering their phone. Then I need to have and add in that other marketing strategy in order to compensate for the people that aren't answering. Right. Which is easier said than done, obviously. Right. It's easier to say that, but common sense though shows that, if I'm dialing 100 people and I get a hold of 25 of them via the phone, the other 75 need to be sent a postcard, and I need to build a KPI about how many times do I have to send that postcard to 75 people until I get a response back. Right. I just have to build that KPI. But what is for certain is that if I don't, somebody else is going to buy from that person. And if that does happen, I need something in place to know that someone bought from that person, from one of those 75. And once that sale happens, I need to be able to look and reach out to that person that bought that property. Like, hey, how did you get a hold of this? Like, how did you buy this property? I've been trying to get a hold of this person for like 3 months.
Right. So I know like one of the main KPIs that I do know is that for me, it takes 155 conversations with somebody to get a lead. But the downside of that is that's not on like a specific niche. That's just on, well, I guess the niche is vacant, you know.
I lost you for a second, but I wanted to say something on that, which might have been your question. So if you're focused on just vacants, right, and it's 155 to get a lead, 155 answers, right, or correct people to get a lead. That means we got to know how many dials we got to do, right, to get to those 155. Look at the last leads that you had that were vacant, and look at the type of list they're on in your account, right, and then just focus that. And choose that. It might not be tax lien. It might be high equity. And if it's high equity, then filter by high equity. So that are, it doesn't matter if they're vacant or not, and reach out to them, right? That might be what you need to do. Every market is different. And sometimes some markets, vexation-based data isn't even like good, right? Because the vexation is so prominent, it's the natural thing in that market. Like look at a lot of lower income areas. Vacant properties in lower income areas is like the worst list ever. Like every property is fucking vacant. You know what I mean? Low income list in a low income area is pretty useless, right? I mean, you could just pull the fucking the high equity list in a low income area. Pretty stupid, right? There's very specific things like that you have to understand about a market to find that pocket of where you want to focus on. And that's why some people just do the blast marketing and then stick with that. But what's true no matter what is, if you plug the holes, right, and you focus on the metrics that are needed to be focused on, even if you add in that bulk marketing aspect of things, and like you're gonna have a much more solid, operation overall. And it obviously it really just depends on, where someone wants to be spending their money. Because what sucks is if we just guess and we just start, by doing all the blasting right away, then we just end up spending a bunch of money. And now if we don't have everything else in lock and all the other KPIs that we understand, then what ends up happening is we just end up spending money. And 3 months later from now, or 4 months from now, we realize that we just spent like, 15 grand and we haven't had any leads still. So we assumed what it was that we needed to do, and we kind of guessed, and then we just spent money. And it's not to say that maybe in like another 15 calls, we wouldn't get a $45,000 deal and then have a good KPI to base off of. But most of the time, that's not the case with people. So, yeah, look back at those vacants, those that you have that are leads. Look at the list and that it's on those records, and base it off of that. It's okay to still do an overarching, straight, stacked list as well. But the thing is that I probably would say just kind of veer away from is vacant data is harder to get a hold of. Period. And so focus on something that is the person's easier to be found. Owner occupied data, because there should be living in the property, right? So owner occupied tax delinquent data, maybe focus on that, right? Because they're in the house. You could go door knock and you're going to have a heightened, because it's not a guess then. You're just literally going there to door knock to have a conversation. You don't know if unlike vacant data, you're going to door knock to maybe they're there, right? Owner occupied, theoretically they should be there because they're receiving their mail there. And that your mail is going to get to their house and they're going to be able to look at it. Right. So it's all about trying to have more impressions, just like any online market or anything else, or any marketing in general. Like you need impressions. You're trying to get as many impressions as possible. With dialing, an impression is someone that's picking up, right? You need as many pickups as possible. But more importantly, for those pickups to be successful, you need to be the correct number. Unlike online ads, you have to have a click-through rate, and then your messaging has to have a conversion. So one you have more control over than the other in general. And so if that they're supposed to be living there, then you can, send them that postcard. You can also then try to call them, and you can work that tax delinquent owner occupied. I've made most of my money off of tax delinquent owner occupied properties where they lived in the property. Right. Obviously, it comes with the headache of getting them out of the property. So it's not as nice in that respect, but I tell you what, the reviews on it are very good, because they feel super thankful, and obviously there is the mix of individuals who are like super hard-headed, like I don't ever need to pay my taxes, but The good thing about those types of people is that now it's going to tax auction, and you can always bid at tax auction. And at least you probably already walked the property where most people bidding at tax auction haven't.
Okay, so you would say get all the tax delinquent, go owner occupant, go through all that, and then like as far as like the weekly data or monthly data, that's when we'd start trying to tackle the new tax auction properties.
Yeah, so tax auction properties you can start doing the tax auction now, because they're going to be part of what you already have. So export out those tax auction properties on a monthly basis and get them in there, and they're automatically should be prioritized, right? So as you're calling through that, if you have a tax delinquent list and it's on the tax auction, register, then that should automatically be a filter of like hot, you do these first, right? So I would automate that on a monthly basis, pull those, upcoming auctions, and you have a filter preset in REISift to watch for slotted for next month's auction, to where every month that gets checked on a first month, just like on the vacancy check. And you say, okay, cool, these are the ones I need to focus on priority, this month.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would do. And then again, what I would end up doing is I would be preemptive. Remember, all we're trying to do is make money from real estate. I don't care how it happens. So it doesn't matter if it's at the front side or the back side of the transaction. So what you need to do is you got to have all this stuff piped up, and just understand this is all the people that are tax auction that I've reached. Because I haven't reached them, I know they're going to go to auction here on this month, right?
Yep.
So have the money available to bid at the fucking tax auction. So I just we just did a call with somebody the other day on a dojo just before you here, and they weren't wanting to focus in their local market, but there was another flipper doing 50 flips a year in his market. I'm like, well, how many did you do? 12. I'm like, okay, well, you got fucking plenty of room. Why do you think you can't do more? A lot of times he's trying to go into a virtual market, right? And so why are we going to a virtual market? It's the same thing with you right now. There's so much, you know a lot of individuals, a lot of properties that probably went to tax auction that you probably haven't even bid on. So sometimes it's because the true thing that we needed to do was get money, or we needed to add in this process over here to bring revenue into the company. And that could actually be what we're really good at. That we're thinking that we want to be really good up here, when in all reality, this is our bread and butter, and this is what we should be focusing on. And then this over here is what we're going to focus on after the fact, to kind of like bolster and just grow my company. So it just depends, man. But I think we got enough to get rocking and rolling. Let's look at those KPIs. Let's understand where did that fall off happen. Let's focus on just tax delinquencies. Owner occupied first. Let's see how many, and do not give a shit about like how much they're delinquent and all the other kind of stuff. Just get all the tax delinquencies, get it all in there. And let's focus on owner occupied tax delinquent properties. Let's send them direct mail, and let's start Sensei flowing them. And let's focus on that as what is our no shit right? Skip trace in one location, go through them. Anybody who we didn't reach, skip trace in second location, go through them, and then door knock.
Okay. And would you say, so with all the tax delinquent, we're Sensei flowing, and then the direct mail is part of the Sensei flow, so we're not doing a blanketed postcard initially. We're just hitting.
I would be doing a blanketed against all tax delinquent, and then I would narrow in Sensei flow to the owner occupied individuals.
Okay, so blanket all tax DQ, and then Sensei flow the owner occupied ones.
Yeah, that's what I would do. And let's like for Eric, you can just focus on fucking really narrowing in on tax delinquencies in Pinellas County in that area, and get consistent on those. Because once we can do that, then we can start looking at, well, what's the problem? Why is it tax delinquent? It could be because it's probate. Yeah. Right. And it could be because it's vacant, and it could be because of this. But okay, well, let's figure that out after we get some lead gen and what's our most common closing, because we could get a fuck ton of properties that are tax delinquent and probate, but if they never go to the closing table, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
So it might be vacant tax delinquents with an absentee high equity homeowner, like that ends up being our bread and butter. That ends up being, or it could be that, like with me, the owner occupied tax delinquencies, because I can resonate with them and I can speak to them more. Right. I'm better at that from a sales perspective and explaining the process. Right. And so, cool. All right, man. Anyway, let's narrow down on that. Let me know what you come up with, and hopefully we'll get you back on here in like 3 months from now, and we'll see where you're at. Cool.
That sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Eric, man. Appreciate it. Enjoy the weather down there in St. Pete.
Will do. Thank you.
All right.